The alien experiment. The massive view screen flickered to life, illuminating the faces of the Galactic Council members with an eerie blue glow. Their eyes, a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes, all focused on the same image, a barren, rust-colored landscape stretching as far as the eye could see. This was Novus 9, one of the harshest planets in the known universe. High Counselor Zix, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, leaned forward in his chair. "Is everything prepared?" he asked, his voice a melodious trill that belied the gravity of the situation. "Yes, High Counselor," replied Vela, the chief scientist. Her four arms moved in perfect synchronization as she manipulated the holographic controls before her. "The human volunteer has been briefed and is ready for insertion." A murmur rippled through the assembled council members. This experiment was unprecedented, even by the standards of the technologically advanced Galactic Federation. They had encountered countless species in their exploration of the cosmos, but humans remained an enigma. Despite their primitive technology, humans had managed to survive and even thrive in conditions that would have decimated other races. "Remind me again," rumbled Karn, a boulder-like being from a high-gravity world. "Why are we doing this?" Zix's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with patience. "To understand, Karn. Humans have rejected our offers of advanced technology, claiming it would erode their spirit of innovation. This experiment will test that claim. Can a human truly survive on one of the most inhospitable planets we know, without any technological assistance?" The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If humans could indeed survive in such conditions, it would force a revaluation of their place in the galactic community. "Insertion in 10 seconds, Vela announced, her voice cutting through the tension. On the screen, a shimmering portal opened in the dusty air of Novus 9. Through it stepped a single figure, the human volunteer. As the portal closed behind her, leaving her alone on the alien world, the council leaned forward as one. The human, a woman named Sarah Chen, stood motionless for a moment, taking in her surroundings. She wore only simple, durable clothing. No protective suit, no breathing apparatus, nothing but the clothes on her back and the shoes on her feet. The aliens watched, fascinated, as she took her first deep breath of the planet's thin, acrid air. "Atmospheric composition is highly toxic," one of the junior scientists reported. "By our calculations, she should be experiencing severe respiratory distress within minutes." But Sarah showed no signs of distress. She coughed once, twice, then seemed to adjust. With deliberate movements, she began to survey her immediate surroundings. "Remarkable," whispered Zix. "Her species' adaptability is even greater than we anticipated." For the next hour, the council watched in rapt attention as Sarah methodically explored the area around her insertion point. She collected small rocks, examined the sparse, alien vegetation, and tested the stability of the rocky outcroppings nearby. All the while, she maintained a calm, almost meditative demeanor. "What is she doing?" Karn asked, confusion evident in his gravelly voice. "She should be panicking, searching desperately for water or shelter." Vela's eyes narrowed as she studied the human's movements. "I believe she's learning, gathering information before she acts. It's a surprisingly rational approach, given the circumstances." As the harsh sun of Novus 9 began to set, painting the sky in shades of deep crimson and burnt orange, Sarah finally seemed ready to act. She had gathered a small pile of the driest vegetation she could find, along with several rocks of various sizes. To the astonishment of the watching aliens, she began to strike two of the rocks together near the pile of dry plants. "Is she attempting to create fire?" one of the council members asked incredulously. "Without tools." Their amazement grew as, after several attempts, a spark caught. Within moments, Sarah had nurtured it into a small but steady flame. The aliens watched, transfixed, as she carefully fed the fire, building it up to a respectable size. "Impossible," Karn muttered. "The oxygen content in that atmosphere is barely sufficient to sustain combustion." Zix raised a hand for silence. And yet, she has done it. We must reassess our assumptions. As night fell and the temperature plummeted, Sarah used her fire to stay warm. She had found a small overhang in a nearby rock formation and had created a rudimentary shelter. The council watched as she heated rocks in the fire, then arranged them around her sleeping area for additional warmth. Her resourcefulness is unexpected, Vila admitted, but surely she cannot sustain this. The real challenges will come with time. Finding food, sourcing water, protecting herself from Novus Nine's more dangerous indigenous life forms. Zix nodded slowly. Perhaps, but I suspect this human may continue to surprise us. We will maintain constant observation. I want to know everything. Her vital signs, her decision-making processes, how she interacts with the environment. If humans can truly thrive without advanced technology, even in conditions like these, it could change everything we thought we knew about technological progress and species development. As the first day of the experiment drew to a close, Sarah Chen slept fitfully in her makeshift shelter, unaware of the profound impact her actions were already having on her alien observers. The questions her presence on Novus 9 raised would echo through the corridors of power in the Galactic Federation for years to come. The council members retired for the night, their minds buzzing with new possibilities. They had expected this experiment to be a simple demonstration of the necessity of advanced technology for survival in extreme conditions. Instead, it was rapidly becoming a lesson in human ingenuity and adaptability. As Zix prepared to leave the observation chamber, he paused, his gaze drawn back to the screen where Sarah's sleeping form was barely visible in the dying light of her fire. We may have underestimated these humans, he mused softly. Perhaps there is more to learn from them than we ever imagined. With that thought lingering in the air, the first day of the experiment came to an end. But for Sarah Chen, alone on a hostile alien world, her greatest challenges and triumphs still lay ahead. Adapting to the unknown. The alien sun rose over Novus 9, its harsh light creeping across the barren landscape. Sarah Chen stirred in her makeshift shelter, her eyes blinking open to face her second day on this hostile world. The Galactic Council, having monitored her throughout the night, leaned forward in anticipation. Vital signs are stable, Vela reported, her four hands dancing over the holographic controls. Remarkably, she seems to have suffered no ill effects from exposure to the atmosphere. Sarah emerged from her shelter, stretching muscles stiff from the cold night. Her face was etched with determination as she surveyed her surroundings in the morning light. Without hesitation, she set about rekindling her fire from the previous night's embers. Fascinating, murmured Zix. She prioritizes fire. She understands its importance for survival. As the flames flickered to life, Sarah began to arrange rocks around the fire pit, creating a more permanent structure. Her movements were deliberate, conserving energy while working efficiently. But what about water? Karn rumbled. No species can survive long without it, especially in these conditions. As if in answer to his question, Sarah stood, brushing dust from her clothes. She picked up a large flat rock she had collected the previous day and began walking with purpose. The council watched in silence as Sarah made her way across the rocky terrain. She moved slowly but steadily, her eyes constantly scanning the ground and the horizon. After nearly an hour of travel, she paused, crouching down to examine something. "Zoom in," Zix commanded, and the view screen obliged. Sarah was inspecting a small depression in the rock. As the aliens watched, she placed her flat rock over the depression, angling it slightly. Then, using smaller rocks, she propped up one end of the flat stone. "What is she doing?" one of the junior council members asked, bewildered. Vela's eyes widened in realization. She's creating a solar still. The depressions in the rock likely contain trace amounts of moisture. By covering them and allowing the sun to heat the area, she can collect condensation. The council members exchanged looks of astonishment. This level of ingenuity was unexpected, even given what they had seen so far. Sarah, unaware of her audience, continued her work. She set up several more of these makeshift solar stills before returning to her camp. There she busied herself with reinforcing her shelter, using rocks and the sparse vegetation to create a more robust structure. As the day wore on, the council observed Sarah's methodical approach to survival. She foraged for edible plants, using her knowledge of earth botany to identify potential food sources. She tested each new plant carefully, taking only small bites and waiting to ensure no adverse reactions before consuming more. Her caution is commendable, Zix noted. She doesn't allow desperation to cloud her judgment. By midday, Sarah had returned to check on her solar stills. To the council's amazement, she was able to collect a small amount of water, barely more than a few mouthfuls, but on this parched world, it was a triumph. Impossible, Karn muttered. She's found water where our sensors detected none. Vela shook her head in wonder. Not impossible, just improbable. She's working with the barest traces of moisture in the air and soil. It's a technique that would never occur to a species accustomed to advanced water purification systems. As the alien sun began its descent, Sarah returned to her camp. The council watched as she took stock of her day's work: a small supply of water, a handful of edible plants, and an improved shelter. It wasn't much, but it was more than any of them had expected her to accomplish. She seems satisfied, one of the council members observed. Zix nodded slowly. Yes, but look closer. She's not complacent. See how she's already preparing for tomorrow. She understands that survival here is an ongoing challenge. Indeed, Sarah was using the remaining daylight to fashion crude tools from the materials around her. She created a rough knife by carefully chipping away at a piece of sharp stone. She wove tough grasses into a simple carrying bag. Each action was purposeful, guided by a clear understanding of her priorities. As night fell once again, Sarah retreated to her improved shelter. The council could see that she had lined it with layers of the fibrous alien vegetation, creating insulation against the cold. We're seeing problem-solving skills that rival or even surpass those of species we consider far more advanced, Vela said, her voice tinged with awe. She's not just surviving. She's adapting, learning, improving her situation with each passing hour. Zix was quiet for a long moment, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with deep thought. We may need to reconsider our entire approach to categorizing species, he said finally. We've always assumed that technological advancement was the primary indicator of a species' capabilities. But this human, she's demonstrating a kind of intelligence and adaptability that our metrics don't account for. The other council members murmured in agreement, their previous skepticism giving way to a growing respect for their human subject. As the second day of the experiment drew to a close, Sarah Chen slept more soundly in her improved shelter. She had faced the challenges of Novus 9 head-on and had not only survived, but had begun to carve out a niche for herself in this alien world. The Galactic Council, watching from their advanced observation chamber, found themselves grappling with unexpected questions. If a single human could accomplish so much with so little, what did that say about the potential of the human species as a whole? And more importantly, what could the rest of the galaxy learn from this remarkable demonstration of resilience and ingenuity? As Zix prepared to retire for the night, he paused once more before the view screen. Continue monitoring her closely, he instructed Vela. I have a feeling that Sarah Chen has much more to teach us. With that, the second day of the experiment ended, leaving the alien observers with more questions than answers. But for Sarah, alone on Novus 9, each challenge overcome was a step towards not just survival, but mastery of her harsh new environment. Unexpected challenges. As the third day dawned on Novus 9, the Galactic Council reconvened, their anticipation palpable. Sarah Chen had surpassed their expectations thus far, but they knew the true test of her abilities was yet to come. Status report, Zix commanded as he settled into his seat. Vela's fingers danced across her holographic interface. Sarah's vital signs remain stable, though there are signs of mild dehydration and fatigue. More concerning, however, is the weather system approaching her location. The main view screen shifted to display a swirling mass of angry red and orange, creeping across the planet's surface towards Sarah's position. "A dust storm," Karn growled, "and a big one at that. Even our shielded outposts struggle with storms of this magnitude." The Council watched as Sarah emerged from her shelter, immediately noticing the change in the air. She squinted at the horizon, where a faint haze was beginning to obscure the alien landscape. "Remarkable," murmured one of the junior council members. "She's aware of the impending danger without any meteorological equipment." Sarah wasted no time. With swift, purposeful movements, she began to reinforce her shelter. She piled rocks around the base, weaving tough vegetation between them to create a windbreak. The council observed in fascination as she then began to dig, creating a shallow trench around her camp. "What is she doing now?" Karn asked, his rocky brow furrowed in confusion. Vila leaned forward, her eyes wide with realization. "She's creating a drainage system. When the storm hits, it will likely bring flash floods. She's preparing for water as well as wind." As the storm drew nearer, Sarah's preparations grew more frantic. She gathered all of her supplies, including her precious water, and secured them in the deepest part of her shelter. Then, using a mixture of mud and plant fibers, she began to seal the gaps in her rocky refuge. The council watched in tense silence as the storm finally hit. Winds howled across the barren landscape, whipping up clouds of dust that reduced visibility to near zero. Sarah huddled in her shelter, her face illuminated by the faint glow of her carefully maintained fire. Hours passed, and the storm showed no signs of abating. The council members took turns monitoring the situation, their concern growing with each passing moment. "Her oxygen levels are dropping," Vila reported, her voice tight with worry. "The dust is too fine. It's penetrating her shelter despite her efforts." Zix's bioluminescent patterns pulsed rapidly, a sign of his agitation. "We should extract her. This experiment has yielded valuable data, but it's not worth the loss of life." But before he could give the order, something on the screen caught his attention. Sarah was moving, fighting against the howling wind to reach the entrance of her shelter. In her hands, she held a piece of her clothing, which she had fashioned into a crude mask. "Incredible," breathed Vila. "She's created a filter for the dust." With her makeshift mask in place, Sarah began to methodically patch the gaps in her shelter that the storm had exposed. She worked tirelessly, ignoring the stinging sand and howling wind, focused solely on survival. As the storm raged on, Sarah faced yet another challenge. A flash flood, just as she had anticipated, swept through her camp. But thanks to her foresight in digging the trench, the worst of the water was diverted away from her shelter. Her ability to predict and prepare for multiple threats simultaneously is unprecedented, Zix said, his voice filled with awe. The storm lasted for 2 full days. Throughout it all, Sarah demonstrated a level of resilience that left the alien observers stunned. She rationed her dwindling supplies with ruthless efficiency, maintained her fire against all odds, and continuously adapted her shelter to meet the changing threats. When the storm finally passed, Sarah emerged from her battered but intact shelter. The landscape around her had been transformed, scoured by wind and water. Many of her carefully constructed solar stills had been destroyed, and much of the sparse vegetation she had relied on for food was gone. The council expected to see despair on Sarah's face. Instead, they saw determination. Without hesitation, she set about rebuilding, improving, and adapting to the new reality of her environment. Zix nodded slowly, his earlier doubts forgotten. "We are witnessing something truly extraordinary here. This human isn't just surviving. She's thriving in the face of adversity. She's turning setbacks into opportunities for growth. If humans can adapt this quickly and effectively to unknown environments," one member mused, "think of the possibilities for space exploration and colonization." Karn, who had been the most skeptical at the start, rumbled in agreement. "And their problem-solving skills. Imagine if we could harness that creativity, combine it with our advanced technology. Zix held up a hand for silence, his eyes never leaving the screen where Sarah continued her tireless work. We must be cautious. What we're seeing here is indeed remarkable, but it also raises concerns. A species this adaptable, this resilient, they could be formidable if they ever decided to expand aggressively. The council fell silent, contemplating this sobering thought. On the screen, Sarah paused in her work, looking up at the alien sky with an expression of wonder and determination. In that moment, she seemed to embody both the promise and the potential threat that humanity represented to the galactic community. As the third phase of the experiment drew to a close, the Galactic Council found themselves grappling with questions far beyond the scope of their original inquiry. Sarah Chen had not only survived the unsurvivable, she had forced an advanced alien civilization to reconsider their fundamental understanding of intelligence, adaptability, and the very nature of progress. The experiment was far from over, but already it was clear that its impact would be felt across the galaxy for generations to come. And down on the surface of Novus 9, unaware of the profound effect she was having on her alien observers, Sarah Chen continued her solitary struggle, every challenge overcome a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity.